Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is your course instructor Shiza Ayaz from Department of Botany, DSNT, University of Education, Township, Lahore. The subject for the present lecture is environmental biology. The topic is sediment pollution, and the part under this heading is called as herbicide. This is lecture 12. So, what is herbicide? A herbicide is a chemical method of weed control. They are also commonly known as weed killer, are the substances which are used to control the unwanted plants. Selective herbicide controls specific weed species while leaving the desired crop relatively unharmed, while the non-selective herbicide, sometimes also called as the total weed killer, in commercial product can also be used to clear the waste ground, industrial as well as all other construction areas. Railways, railway embankments, as they kill all plant material with which they come into contact. Apart from these two classes of the herbicides, including selective as well as non-selective herbicides, other important distinctions include persistence, which is also known as the residual action, which means that how long the product stays in the place and remains active. Means of uptake, whether it is absorbed by above ground foliage only through the roots or by any other mean. And the mechanism of action, that is how it works. Historically, products such as common salt and many other metal salts were also used as herbicides. However, these have gradually fallen out of the favor, and in some countries these are considered to be banned due to their persistence in the soil, their toxicity, and the groundwater contamination, etc. So what is a herbicide? As I have discussed its detail, like if you want to define this term, this is called as a chemical which is toxic to plants, which is also used to destroy unwanted vegetation, which is called as weeds. So in the background picture, you can see all these are different kind of herbicides which are used in order to control the weeds, grass, and many other plants. So as it is a chemical which is used to kill or inhibit the growth of weeds and other many plant pests which are considered to be unwanted. So the weeds, we can define this term weed that it is any plant which is adapted to the man-made habitats and causing interference of the use of those habitats is called as weed. So a weed is a plant which is considered as undesirable in a particular situation, that is a plant in the wrong place. We can say also that here in the picture you can see these are all the weeds that is growing into the wrong place. The common example of the plants like unwanted in the human controlled settings such as farm, field, garden, lawns, and the parks. Taxonomically, the term weed has no botanical significance because it is a plant that is a weed in one context is not a weed actually when it's growing in a situation where it is in fact wanted and where one species of the plant is valuable crop plant and the another species in the same genus might be a serious weed growing among the cultivated crop varieties. So in the same way, volunteer crop plants are regarded as the weeds in a subsequent crop. The many plants that people widely regarded as weed are also internationally grown in the garden and any other cultivated areas, in which they are also sometimes referred to as the beneficial weeds. The term weed is also applied to any plant that grows or reproduces aggressively or is invasive outside its native habitat. More broadly, the term weed occasionally is applied to the species outside the plant kingdom, the species that can survive in a diverse environment and reproduce quickly. In this sense, it has even been applied to the human beings also. So why these weeds are important? Because weeds serve as an important source of the genetic material for the crop improvement, such as like breeding for resistance to the pest and the diseases, which are made possible by the genetic material which is provided by these wild species of the crop plants. And they can also serve as a host beneficial to the insects and same time provide nectar for the bees. And it can also be considered to be an important factor because some lawn and the garden weeds, they bring the nutrients in the form of water up from the deeper into the soil down from the air, which make them available to all kinds of microbe and the plants. So basically here in the picture you can see that the weeds are growing not only onto the steep slopes, not the trees, but they prevent the soil erosion also. In this way we can say that the weeding is essential or necessary, though it has some advantages as well. So there are many problems which are caused by these weeds, like they may reduce the crop yield. The damage caused by them are reduction in the crop yield means that the weed compete with the crop for the water, nutrient, and light. Being hardy and vigorous in the growth habit, they grow faster than the crops and consume larger amount of water, nutrients, thus causing heavy losses in the yields. So in this way, the crop contamination chances may arise. So these weeds frequently emerge significantly before or after the crop, resulting in the growth of that crop and the weeds being out of reach. If the weeds emerge ahead of the crop, they may reduce the yield significantly by the time the crop reaches the stage which is used to trigger the herbicide application. Certain weeds, for example, many of them which can be eaten by the cattle impart an undesirable flavor to the milk. For example, these weeds similarly get attached to the body of the sheep and they impair the quality of wool. In this way, certain poisonous weeds like the Thura alba, it may cause death of the cattle if they are unknowingly eaten by that cattle. In this way, the wheat can reduce the wool quality. They exhibit allelopathy. So what is allelopathy? It refers to the beneficial or the harmful effect of one plant on another plant, both crop and the wheat species, from the release of biochemicals known as allelochemicals. So from the plant parts, by the process of leaching, root exudation, volatilization, residue decomposition, and many other processes in both natural and agricultural systems, etc. So in this way, some weeds have an allelopathic effect, or they may exhibit this type of category that may affect on the crop plants by synthesizing and releasing the toxic or inhibitory substances that interfere with the germination of the crop seeds or subsequently retarded the growth of that plants also. So weed can also harbor the pest insects. For example, weed may affect the ability of dispersing insects to locate the crop plant that can move easily from the weed to the crop plant. That damaging population densities of the insects will also be affected badly. So they may also harbor the insect, pest, and diseases. Weeds either give shelter to the various insect, pests, and the diseases, or it may serve as the alternative host. Weed secretions are also harmful. The heavy growth of certain weeds like quaggrass and motha, it lowers the germination rate and also reduces the growth of many crop plants. So there are several problems which are caused by the weeds in the agricultural crop. Here you can see in the picture, this is the actual crop plant and the weed is showing indicating into the red in color. So in this way, the weed reduces the form and the forest productivity. They invade the crops, smoother pastures, and in some cases they can harm even the livestock. They aggressively compete for the water, nutrients, sunlight, resulting in the reduced crop yield and poor quality of that plants. So they can also interfere by means of harvesting, and they can compete for the many nutrient space slide by affecting the plant growth. Hence, the presence of that weed increases the cost of agriculture and hinders the process of work. So it can also increases the irrigation requirement because it can absorb already all the moisture that is available for the particular crop of the plant in order to get the maximum yield. So there are basically two types or the two kinds of the herbicides, like species specific herbicides, and they are designed to kill a specific kind of the plant only, leaving other desirable plants are unharmed or they may be the unaffected. Non-specific herbicide, they kill every plant that come into direct contact with that of herbicide. So that were the kinds, and now these were the types of the herbicide, like organic and inorganic. So first category or first type is called as organic herbicide. Organic means that a molecule has a carbon backbone with some hydrogen thrown in for good measure. So living creatures are made up of various kinds of organic compounds. Like inorganic molecules are composed of many other elements. So organic herbicides, organic meaning the product is made from the chemical that naturally occur in nature. They may break down quickly and leaving no residual effect, and they are dominant today in almost all and each aspect of life. They are most effective and selective also, and their use was started before around 40 years ago. So they can break down very quickly, leaving no residual effect, and they are considered to be low toxic. If the concentration reaching to a lower level, then they are considered to be the toxic. They are also gaining in popularity due to both environmental and the health concerns. For the weeds, they can also be expensive for the commercial organic farm or the home grower. So they are generally used in conjunction with the cultural and the mechanical weed control practices. Non-selective, meaning they have no ability to differentiate between the weeds or the basil plants. They are also considered to be most effective on the post-emergent plants that those are currently growing. So these are a few examples of the organic herbicides which are using in our daily routine, like weed form, having the composition of 20% acetic acid, seaside, 5% citric acid, green match, including 55% of D-limonene, and Metrotech 50% clove oil is also included during its composition. Weed Zap, Green Match EX, containing 50% of the lemongrass oil, can be mixed in these types of different amendments. Inorganic molecules, like inorganic herbicides containing the inorganic molecules of other element like hydrogen, carbon, if both are present, they are considered to be the organics. So they may include all inorganic arsenicals, including sodium arsenite, arsenic trioxide, sodium chlorate, ammonium sulfamate, and the borax mixture. How do herbicides may work? So every herbicide works in one of the two ways. The first way is by means of contact, which is called as the direct contact action. So wherein the herbicide kills only the parts of the plant they are directly applied to it. So herbicide that work through contact, these are considered to be the fast acting because their function is fast. They rapidly applied, directly applied, and then they kill only the part of the plant which are in a direct contact. Systemic action, wherein the herbicide is absorbed into the plant either by its roots or the waxy surface. So it then moves throughout the entire plant, shutting down all of its function. The herbicide that works systemically are also called as the slow acting. So why should we use an herbicide? The question in the mind. So any herbicide should be used in appropriate quantity anytime. Plant pests, weeds that are competing with the desired plants or the crop for the space, water, light, and other nutrients. They're often used in the lawn and the garden care products to achieve a desired aesthetic effect. So they're also used in the farming where the crop productivity is decreased by the certain plant pest species. So how we can control the weed? There are several methods by which we can control the weed in the agriculture or the horticultural crops or the field, like the chemical method, physical method, biological method, and the cultural methods. So weed control is a botanical component of the pest control, which attempt to stop the weed, especially the noxious weeds, from competing with the desired flora and fauna, including all domesticated plants and the livestock, and in natural settings, preventing non-native species competing with the native one. So weed control method is important in agriculture. The methods include hard cultivation with hoes, forward cultivation with many cultivators, smoothing of the field by means of mulching method, lethal wilting with the high heat, burning, and the chemical control by means of herbicide, which means the weed killer, by the use of many weed killer. So by use of chemical weed control, that is the substance which is toxic to be used by the plants and destroy the unwanted vegetation. So these are basically 3 to 4 herbicides or the chemical treated weed control method which are commercially available in the market. So herbicide mode of action. The complete sequence of the events, of all these events leading to plant injury, include all areas of interaction between the herbicide and a crop or a test species. For example, the herbicide must have a direct contact within the weeds. Absorption, the herbicide may be directly absorbed by that weed. Toxicity or movement that the herbicide must move to the site of the action in that weed. They create toxicity that they must possess or require sufficient level of toxicity or potency that are known to kill that weed by creating that toxicity. Finally, death. The death must cause injury to the weed leading to eventual death. So this is how herbicide mode of action are playing role in any agricultural field. Target site. Target site term is the primary target site or commonly used to describe a biochemical location at which a herbicide may potentially inhibit an important process. So in this diagram, here is the apex, which is called as the intercalary apical meristem, which is the growing point for any plant. If the herbicide directly applied here, it may directly attack to that target site, by which it may inhibit various important biochemical processes of the plants by means of absorption. So on the basis of their action, they can be divided into various types or various action that may be considered as non-selective method of herbicide application that kill all the plant, including targeted as well as non-targeted plants. Selective can kill only some targeted plant species in the field, and it can also be applied directly into the field where no translocation is required by a certain plant species to be directly act upon it. It can also be applied foliar application, in terms of foliar application by means of contact, that is a direct contact or systemic action. So there are many types of herbicides on the base of their mode of action. Herbicides that inhibit photosynthesis like nitrile, triazinones, etc. The herbicides that inhibit the pigment biosynthesis, for example, amitrol and many other. Auxin type herbicides, for example, 2,4-D, etc. The herbicides that inhibit lipid biosynthesis, for example, CHDs and AOPPS. So the term capital A, capital O, capital P is refers to as aryl oxy phenoxy propionate herbicide. Again, I will repeat it. Aryl oxy phenoxy propionate herbicides and many others. The herbicides that inhibit amino acid biosynthesis may include glufosinate and glyphosate, etc. Herbicides that disrupt cell division functions may include toluidines and trifluralins, etc. Herbicides that inhibit cellulose biosynthesis are benzamide, isoxazoline, etc. So there are many important herbicides. For example, a commercially available herbicide which is called as 2,4-D dichlorophenoxyacetic acid, which is an example of the synthetic auxin. Second most important herbicide is called as the atrazine, a triazine herbicide, which is used for the crops of corn, sorghum in order to control the broadleaf weeds and the grasses. and it is still used because of its low cost. Dicamba is another important herbicide which is persistent against the broadleaf vegetations. It activates into the soil and also including turf and field corn. And it is also considered to be an example of the synthetic auxin, growth hormone. Picclaram. Picclaram is a pyridine herbicide which is mainly used to control all the unwanted trees in the pastures and the edges, along all the edges of agricultural field. And it is also another example of the synthetic auxin. Paraquat. It is a non-selective contact herbicide for no-till burn down in the aerial destruction of marijuana and the cocoa plantings. Paraquat. So on the basis of two important classes, the herbicides can be divided into the pre-emergent and the post-emergent herbicides. With this, I will discuss all these into the next lecture in detail. Here you can see only a summary of that two most important classes of herbicide. First one is called as post-emergent and the second one is called as pre-emergent. The post-emergent is further subdivided into the grassy weeds and into the broadleaf weeds. So these herbicide directly have a contact with post-emergent application or the mode of action in these two types of the weeds, whereas pre-emergent herbicide directly affecting on the mode of action of their selective as well as non-selective nature. So this was all about today discussion. Here is a list of all the references. Thank you very much. Along with all these references, here is the list of the web links that I have browsed in order to prepare this lecture. Thank you very much.